Tonight, MPP General Secretary John Boydu, a target of NDC prosecution if they next win power. As the party serves notice, they will hold him accountable for his alleged involvement in illegal mining.
Clearly, John Boydu knows that he cannot pass the accountability test. When his role in that infamous missing excavator scandal, we wish to remind John Boydu that the day of accountability may tarry, but it will surely arrive.
We have the latest on the escalating accusations and counter-accusations between the two main political parties over which of them is most corrupt.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder, as well as Vodafone. Together we can. He had questioned John Mahama's moral authority in the fight against corruption. Well, tonight the opposition National Democratic Congress is fighting back. Serving notice, they will hold MPP's General Secretary John Boydu to full account for his alleged role in illegal mining. Now, Mr. Boydu had categorically denied any involvement in Galamsey. Tonight, though, the NDC is taking him to task after he questioned the party's 2020 flag bearer's track record on corruption last week. At the press briefing today, the NDC also questioned why the Power Distribution Services (PDS) has failed to refund nearly 1.2 billion cedis it had collected from consumers when it had management control over power distribution in Ghana. My colleague Ernest Menu was at the briefing and joins me in the studio. Ernest, it appears these accusations and counter-accusations were all triggered by some pronouncements made by John Mahama initially, which John Boydu reacted to last week in a press conference.
Exactly. So the former president, John Mahama, has been on a thank you tour in some regions in the north. We know he was in the Upper West and then in the Upper East region. And of course, he speaks on wide-ranging issues, but he touched on corruption. And said there's so much corruption under this Akufo-Addo government. The president had campaigned on his claim of being incorruptible, but there's so much that can be, pointed to under the Akufo-Addo government to support their claim that he is corrupt, and the NPP government, for that matter, is a corrupt administration, and that the only way out, if Ghanaians really indeed want to hold this government accountable, is to kick them out come 2024. This issue, the NPP did not take lightly. Last week, John Boydu held a press conference at the party's headquarters responding to John Mahama, saying that he does not have the moral authority to speak on issues of corruption. And of course, he gave a litany of cases that were recorded or reported under the NDC government at the time, and said that because of these issues, John Mahama didn't have the right to speak about corruption. Then the NDC responded today. We can listen to John Boydu make the claim, last week at his news conference.
This is the same Mahama who was asked on an international media platform whether he was corrupt, and he replied, in which capacity? As a human being. We all know that unlike President Akufo-Addo, candidate John Mahama cannot and has not been able to make any bold statement to tout his incorruptibility because of his personal involvement in a lot of the corruption scandals that plague his administration. He has proved to be corrupt, and that during his time as vice president, his bots, and which has been said over and over again, on the acquisition of 5 aircrafts, to the extent that his boss has to call for investigation in some of those activities.
So, Ernest, that was John Boydu last week. Today the NDC is taking him to task. They single him out as one of those who they allege was complicit in the missing excavators and illegal mining activities in Ghana.
Yeah, and you recall, Evans, that during the fight against Galamsey under the former minister, Frimpong, Professor Frimpong, a number of excavators were seized, about 500 of them. Later, in an interview right here on Joy FM with Daniel Dazi on the Super Morning Show, we learned that the excavators cannot be accounted for.
About 500 of them.
500 of them. Eko Suman, we know, was arrested because we understood that he was I beg your pardon, because he was in charge of the excavators. Now, in the wake of that controversy, a tape was leaked, and in that conversation between Eko and the then minister, Professor Frimpong, we hear Eko make the claim that John Boydu, the General Secretary of the NPP, benefited from those excavators.
It must be said, though, John Boydu issued a statement categorically denying that he was ever involved in that.
Exactly. But today the NDC is daring John Boydu to clear his name, if indeed he has nothing to do with that. They say that he in particular is very corrupt and therefore cannot hold a press conference to question John Mahama.
We have not forgotten about how between the years 2018 and 2020, over 500 excavators seized from illegal miners were stolen, sold, and in some cases, distributed to government officials and MPP apparatchiks to promote their illegal mining businesses. Till date, none of the 500 excavators, gold, and the other equipment seized from illegal miners by the Illegal Mining Task Force established by President Akufo-Addo have been accounted for. You would recall that when the missing excavator scandal broke, the then Minister for Environment, Professor Frimpong Boateng, accused the MPP Regional Vice Chairman for the Central Region, Mr. Ekwewusi, of stealing these excavators and filed a criminal complaint with the police to that effect, whereupon Ekwewusi was arrested. A videotape recording emerged which captured two individuals in a heated argument about how the seized excavators were distributed to officials and functionaries of the ruling New Patriotic Party and the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government on grounds that their party needs money. In quotes, party yesika. In that tape, Ekwewusi was heard mentioning the man who likes to accuse everyone of corruption, their General Secretary John Boydu, as one of the MPP bigwigs who were giving some of the seized excavators for his illegal mining businesses that they have destroyed our water bodies and environment. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is the height of hypocrisy, or perhaps sheer impudence, driven by the intoxications of political power, for this same John Boydu to mount a moral horse and talk about corruption today. We are calling on John Boydu and other MPP functionaries who are alleged to be neck deep in the destruction of our forests and water bodies through their illegal mining activities to come out and clear their sullied reputations first before gathering the moral high ground to pontificate about corruption. We can understand why people like John Boydu is pained and petrified by President Mahama's call for Ghanaians to vote out the MPP in 2024 so they can be held accountable for their unprecedented thievery and corruption. Clearly, John Boydu knows that he cannot pass the accountability test when his role in that infamous missing excavator scandal and the illicit galamsey trade is scrutinized. We wish to remind John Boydu that the day of accountability may tarry, but it will surely arrive. I'm sure you even remember that at some point, somebody was arrested who said he was a driver of John Boydu and who was actively engaged in illegal mining.
Well, this is not the only thing they talked about, of course, but this has to do with John Boydu specifically. And the threat there is that if we come to power, we'll hold you accountable. Absolutely. But on the PDS matter, something that Affairs Civil Society guys also raised is that PDS allegedly still has quite substantial amounts that they've collected from customers.
Yes, I remember the PDS deal lasted about 3 months, and they collected monies by way of electricity bills. Sami Jemfi is saying that till date, the 1.2 billion cedis collected under the PDS deal that was botched has not been paid to the Electricity Company of Ghana. Let's listen.
PDS, a company made up of an appointee of President Akufo-Addo, specifically Mr. Philip Ayensu, the owner of TG Energy Solutions, which had 28% share in PDS. and other cronies of the president used a fraudulent insurance guarantee to take over the 20 billion Ghana cedi assets of ECG. This scam was occasioned and facilitated by our jocular Vice President of the Republic, Dr. Babumia, who decided to amend the requirement of a bank guarantee that had to be provided by the concessionaire PDS to establish their financial capacity. He decided to amend that into an insurance guarantee. Even more bizarre and sad is the fact that till date, PDS has refused to refund to the state the electricity bills worth over 1.2 billion Ghana cedis, which they collected from ECG customers, all of us, during the pendency of the ECG PDS concession agreement.
Well, I recall the Deputy Energy Minister in charge of electric power was, when he was vetted, this question came up.
Yes.
And he had said that the part of this is in court, that PDS is still haggling out with government. But this is not the only issues that it will briefly...
There are a number of corruption issues they raised, which they say they will hold the government accountable for. So the PDS, of course, as we mentioned, Ghana Post GPS accusing the Vice President or Superintendent over corruption. A merry deal inflation, that renegotiated deal that led to the exit of Boache Jaco. They also talked about the Ijapa deal, the contract for sales saga involving the PPA boss, that investigation carried out by Manasseh Azeri Awene. Then the claim, the Terminal 3 duty-free shop, remember that issue of, the shop being given to the daughter of the president, then the missing excavators and a host of others. But they actually started accusing the NPP of, and especially attacking the communications director, who said John Mahama was creating a false impression that there was hardship in the country. So these are the major issues they touched.
Thankfully, the NPP's communications director, Mr. Boabenga Samwa, former MP for Adenton constituency, joins us on the telephone line right now. Mr. Samwa, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you for having me.
Also joining me on the telephone line is Felix Kwachifosu, of course.
No, I am not going to engage the NDC. I am going to have a meeting on Wednesday, 10 a.m. So I'm not going to engage Ofosu Kwachi. But at least, let me tell you before I leave.
Nah,
Joy FM's headline was wrong, but you never retracted. Because if you read my speech, nowhere did I say the way the headline put my press conference. So I am not going to engage Mr. Fusukwachi now.
Okay, but just hold on. I was just simply introducing him, and so let me just do that for our listeners' purposes who are listening to us. I also have Felix Kwachifosu, who works in the office of former President John Mahama. Let me come to you, Mr. Boabeng Asama. Felix, thank you for your time also.
My pleasure, Ivan.
Mr. Boabeng, let me start with you. I mean, today we've had the NDC comeback on the press conference that you did last week. Let's start with the missing excavators.
No, Mr. Evans Mensah. I am going to have a press conference on Wednesday, 10 a.m. I am not going to respond to the NDC on your station. I'm going to respond to them on Wednesday, 10 a.m. The only thing I liked about what you said today was that accusation and counter-accusation. Does that save Ghanaians?
Well, but you held the
deadlock, and it will not be the deadlock will not be breaking.
You held a press conference. You made allegations. The party obviously.
They have also held one, and I'm informing you I'm going to hold another one on Wednesday morning.
Well, you didn't need to agree to an interview just to announce that. You could have.
But I told your man who called me that this is my intention. I wasn't going to speak. He insisted.
So if you don't want to speak to that matter, we'll continue to have a conversation with Felix. Thank you very much. With the press conference, all the best with that later this week. But let me bring in Felix now. Felix, thanks for staying on. You don't plan to hold any further press conference later this week, do you?
Well, there's none that I'm aware of, but I'm sure that if it becomes necessary for respond to any particular issues, we will not shrink from that responsibility.
Okay, but so you just had there Babia someone who says he's going to hold down a press conference to respond to the issues that have been raised today, and so he doesn't want to engage the NDC. I mean, just let's start with that the way this looks. I mean, the two parties accusing each other of corruption. You're now going to hold another one. You may also. When does this stop? I mean, does it serve the interest of anybody?
Well, I mean, the national conversation never stops. So every individual or organization that feels that it has anything to say about the way that the nation is governed. It's entitled to say so, whether at a press conference or at any other forum that it deems necessary. But it is imperative to go back to appreciate where all this has come from. So President Mahama embarked on the thank you tour 2 weeks ago. And then during one of the interactions he had on Radio UAR, I believe, he made a point that it is not only the case that President Akufo-Addo and his Vice President, Dr. Bawumia, are supervising unprecedented levels of corruption in the annals of Ghanaian history, but they are simply unwilling to account for their stewardship. And it does not matter how gravely their officials engage in corruption. It does not matter how Ghanaian law is butchered. It does not matter the gravity of wrongdoing on the part of President Akufo-Addo, his vice president, his ministers, or any other officials. They will simply not do anything about it in spite of public uproar and genuine calls for action to be taken. So as far as President Mahama is concerned, the only way that the people of Ghana can exact any measure of accountability from the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government is to vote them out in 2024 so that the government that succeeds them will then have capacity to look into their tenure and hold their officials account for any acts of corruption or any form of wrongdoing against the state of Ghana. I'm sure that every reasonable Ghanaian would appreciate this position because it is not only the duty of the president and his vice president and other officials to protect the public purse, it is their duty to punish wrongdoing to the extent that it comes to light.
So the
But
ultimate. What you mean is that the ultimate judge of this matter will be the citizens, correct? And that they hold the ultimate cane on this matter to whip people, both the NDC and MP. But if you look at that logic, though, just 9 months ago, the people of Ghana gave this current government another opportunity to rule again. Isn't that an endorsement that they believe, as far as this matter is concerned, that they believe more in this government than the Ross?
Evans, to begin with, there is nothing spectacular about securing the second term. All parties that have ruled Ghana since 1992 have secured second term.
But John Mahama did not secure a second term.
But John Mahama was serving in the second term of the NDC. The mandate that we won in 2009 ended in 2016. In between that is 8 years. President Akufo-Addo started the mandate in 2017. It will end in 2024. That is 8 years. President Rawlings started one in 1993, ended in 2001. 8 years. Same for President Akufo. So the trend has been consistent. But the point is that the people may have overlooked transgressions in the last 4 years. They may have given the president the benefit of the doubt, despite the heavy casualties the MPP suffered during the elections, in the hope that he would make amends and perhaps see their point and begin to take proper action to safeguard the public purse, which at the moment he has opened up for systematic rape and abuse by a colony of cousins and relatives in his government. It appears that the president does not appreciate that mandate, and he believes that in spite of the misgivings that Ghanaians have about his stewardship, he will do absolutely nothing. A classic case is the recent Sputnik 5 vaccine scandal, where it has been proven, established beyond doubt by a bipartisan parliamentary committee, that the health minister has violated every known law in Ghanaian jurisprudence by disrespecting the constitution, setting aside the procurement law, and doing things that are at complete variance with our laws. At the very least, Ghanaians expect that President Akufo-Addo would note this wrongdoing and sanction its minister. The president went to the minister's hometown and laughed off a very serious matter like that. He is a president who purported to look into the Australia visa scandal. As I speak to you, not a bed has been held accountable for how Ghanaians masquerading as journalists under visa fraud were taken to Australia. He is a president who has supervised the stealing and selling of over 500 excavators and has done absolutely nothing. And I could go on and on and on. There is a president who carved out a $6 billion worth ECG and gave it to cronies. This same government came out to tell us that PDS secured that concession arrangement under fraudulent pretenses. It was the energy minister at the time, Peter Mewu, who made this declaration. Yet nobody has been held accountable. So Evans, you and I do not need a soothsayer to avail that it will only take electoral defeat for the MPP to be held accountable for the corruption that we are supervising. Since they've been in power, they've had opportunity to look into the tenure of the NDC. Indeed, they've lined up some people in court. Some they have put in jail. So why is it that the MPP is afraid of similar accountability? If they have nothing to hide, why are they so hell-bent on continuing with the looting? Why is it that they are unwilling to listen to the calls of the people of Ghana for them to hold wrongdoers in their government accountable?
But it has, by some of what you said must be, it was President Kufuor who famously said that he won't just act based merely on allegations, that he will require hard evidence to move.
So
isn't that the same criteria?
Sufficient evidence does not exist that Kweku Agyeman-Manu and the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta violated Article 1815 of the Constitution, violated Sections 41 and 2 of the Procurement Law of Ghana, and violated several other laws in respect of the Sputnik 5 scandal. I beg your pardon. Do you need any other evidence to show that indeed about 50 Ghanaians were taken to Australia illegally? This thing that gave us international embarrassment. Do you need further evidence? Do you need any other evidence to show that hundreds of excavators have gotten missing? Such that only recently, a company secured judgment debt of $50 million against the state. So what other evidence do you need to highlight the corruption of this government? Such that you are asking me to provide them.
As an alternative,
it is public knowledge.
As an alternative government in waiting, how differently will you approach this matter of corruption if you win power? Because remember that you've been there before. Same allegations were thrown at you.
Precisely. Indeed, you recall that President Mahama, when he was in power, when issues of corruption came to light, he took firm action. In the Jida case, for instance, not only did he insist that companies that had been paid monies unlawfully refund them, he actually put an appointee of his on trial. This is something that I dare say President Akufo-Addo would never do. President Mahama dismissed an appointee who merely said that if she did not have $1 million in her account, she was not going to antagonize a senior minister. President Mahama dismissed her for expressing a mere intention. So President Mahama has a track record of taking action every time that allegations of corruption has been highlighted. But same cannot be said about President Akufo-Addo. He is intransigent. He does not care about the feelings or the sensibility of Ghanaians to the extent that he has secured their mandate. We could go hang. We can hack the nearest transformer. It doesn't matter how loudly we scream, how loudly we shout. He will do absolutely nothing to any appointee who engages in any wrongdoing.
Felix, I'm grateful that you joined us with your thoughts. I want to bring in the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Of course, they are the authors of the Corruption Perception Index. Mary Ada is with the GRI and joins us on the telephone line right now. Madam Ada, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you very much, Ivan.
So
thank you to your listeners.
We are being treated to this accusations and counter-accusations between the two main political parties. Both of them have served us since 1992. Have had many years in power to deal with corruption and root it out or minimize it. And it appears as this accusation, counter-accusation, are around which of the parties is most corrupt. From where you sit at GI and all that you do on corruption, do you see in this banter, this counter, do you see any real solutions coming out of this, or it's just another, you accuse me, I accuse you, and we are back to square one?
Unfortunately, we are contending with a situation where the two parties decide that it is their terms of reference we must all engage by, instead of activating the various institutional and policy frameworks that we are supposed to be reducing corruption by, if not eradicate completely. I have this feedback, Evans, it's terrible.
Forgive me, is it any better?
Hello?
Is it any better?
Yes. It's
fantastic,
fine.
Yes.
I was hearing myself. So we need to, as a matter of agency, rechannel this discussion to what we want to see this country do, and not what MPP has done and what MPP hasn't done, and measuring that against NDC. So we are now saying this one is more corrupt and this is least corrupt, which is unfortunate. What we want as a people is that we don't want anybody to encourage corruption. As the Constitution spells out, that government will make sure that, or the state shall make sure that we eradicate corruption and the abuse of power. And so what we want to see is just that we put in measures to activate all the frameworks and the institutions capacitated enough to fight corruption. Today, if we are going to be giving examples, we'll give examples of what the NDC didn't do, and we'll give examples of what the MPP is not doing, and that is what they are both doing, which is unfortunate. We should be engaging on evidence as to what the CPI is saying. The CPI says our fight against corruption has not been impressive over the years. It is a fact that when you look at the CPI scores in 2014 or thereabouts, we had our highest score, which is 48. It is also a fact that in 2016, we dropped. In 2017, we had a very huge drop, and that is significant. From 48, we came to 43. That is a very significant drop per the measure of the CPI. And since we have been hovering around 40, 41 to 43. And so we say that since 2017, we have either been 41 or 43 in 2020. So per the margins, if you want who has gained higher per the years, in 2014, we had 48. But it is also true that within that same time, in 2016, we dropped to 43. And that's very significant. So we should be analyzing the data based on that. Again, if you take the Afro barometer, you realize that citizens' perceptions and citizens' experiences of corruption are increasing. So we should rather depart from the argument of who is not more corrupt, but then put in place measures to fight corruption, hold this bull by the horn, and make some progress.
I'm grateful, Mariada, for your time. She is with the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Newsnight starts in 2 minutes.